So we've all heard a ton about Cocoon and Isu and Emulation Station, a lot of the kind of mainstream front ends, as it were. But what about the underdogs? Let's have a look at the latest version of RetroHrai. Hello, so this is just going to be a quick look at a couple of the new features for RetroHrai 0.4. Now, I was going to do a more in-depth video on this, however, the developer himself has released a video which goes into all the new features, all the changes, and a lot of the customization options, and it looks brilliant. So rather than repeat what he's already said, I just wanted to showcase some of the new features for those who might not have seen it. So first up, if we go to a game, so one of the things I really like about this is if you select a game, it will ask you which screen you want to play it on. And this is persistent, so it will remember this. And also one thing I really like as well is if you pick a game, you have this toggle to apply it to all those games on the same platform. You can also customize if you press your select button. You can do per game scraping. You can also set per game background music. So if you're someone who wants to download all the Pokemon themes or the title themes, whatever it might be, you can manually assign those as well. I will say that I am hoping that for a lot of the customization options, they have come from the RetroHrai Discord community, which I'll leave a link to in the below because there's a few guys in there who are doing some great work with finding the best looking artworks. Unfortunately, it's a very manual process to assign them yourself. So I do hope that in future versions, there's a native theme integration of sorts, or at least a more kind of a repository, just so it's easy to get those themes without having to do it manually through your normal Android browser. So if we boot up a game, the main feature I wanted to highlight is if I open up our Fire Red, I love that little animation. So we'll just boot into the game. You might have noticed my Fire Red mastery there. Took me long enough. So we'll just boot into the game. And one thing I wanted to highlight is at the bottom, there have been some additional features added to support the dual screen mode. The developer has finally got his hands on the AY in Thor. I know a lot of you are probably still waiting at this point. Have patience. If you swipe across the bottom, you can see that we have our app drawer here. And then I'm just going to enable it. I thought I'd enabled it already. Nope, I didn't. So we have this screen mirroring. So as you can see, I've got this almost like a magnifier on the bottom. So I can tap the little settings on the bottom right, the little kind of sliders, and I can set this to a specific part of the screen. One thing you can also do, however, is if I open up, say, our Pokemon menu, and I say, let's zoom out, and I want to be reminded of who's in my party, for example. What I can do is I can tap the little camera icon, and that will take a snapshot and freeze the image. So I can always see who's in my party. So for Pokemon, it probably isn't going to be the most useful version of or use of this particular feature. However, in the developer's video, which I'll link below, he showcases the Hollow Knight map. Now, I'm not a big fan of Hollow Knight. I tried it. It was all right. But the way he was using it, where he could open up the map, take a screenshot, and then he's always got that visible map for him. That is a great little feature. So that's the one I wanted to point out. We also, if I stop our capture, we have a trackpad. So this is built in. You can see here, I'm just playing about with it. So this works for browsers. So if we open up, where's Chrome gone? We'll open up some Chrome, and I can use this to browse the web. So I can just swipe up and down. So that's a lovely little touch as well. And finally, one last thing I wanted to point out. So if we open up Game Native, and if we go to, I've got Megabonk installed. If we go to the main game page for that, and I go to the settings cog, and I press create shortcut, it will create in my apps drawer a shortcut. So you can press and hold, you can add it to a platform if I wanted to add it to, say, Windows platform, for example. And then if I come down and then go to my Windows, you can see it's in there along with some others. And then what I can do from here is if I press select and I go to the plus button, I can scrape the metadata. There we go. Can I get the covers as well? Let's scrape the covers. We'll apply that. So one thing that he has added as well is, I'll just go back to that. If you can see at the top, you can now search from the scraper at the top. So rather than having to mess about with the game and rename it and things like that, you can search directly from the scraper itself, which is incredibly handy. So if I were to put in here something like, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto or something, and I can spell it, I can pull different results. And it just gives you that little bit of flexibility. And we can also do the same for screenshots, fan art. Obviously, we can select our audio. I don't know if there's any audio repositories that are available, the same that they are for the artwork and things like that. So maybe something for the future. So that was just a quick look of the new features of RetroHrai. Like I said, I'll link to the developer's video who gives a much more in-depth overview, and he showcases some of the themes. I believe there's a couple of guys in his Discord, which if you're interested in RetroHrai and you want to support the development, then join that Discord and then help the dev out, because he's done a great job so far and he'll continue to do a great job. So I'll put the links down below for his video and his Discord. I advise you watch his video because it's, like I said, a much more detailed overview. If you did like this video, however, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. Tell your friends, and I'll see you next time.